Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the BMS Performance podcast called the Recruitment Roundup, which I hope everyone is now becoming familiar with. Again, just a very brief introduction to BMS for those that are finding out about us for the first time. We're a leading specialist sales and marketing recruitment consultancy established for over 30 years, specialising in these areas. I'm Mike Leather. I've been at BMS for 10 years, and I have the privilege and pleasure of leading the largest sales team in the company, of which my colleague and guest, Dean Richards, today is part of. So I'm delighted to have you along, Dean. Welcome to the show.
Cheers, Mike. Nice to be here.
All good, all good. So why don't you kick off, Dean, by giving the audience a brief overview of yourself, what you do at BMS, and I'm asking this for everyone that comes on, how you got into recruitment in the first place.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, my name's Dean Richards. I'm a national account manager within our healthcare team. So I work with clients in the medical devices and life science sectors to help them recruit customer-facing roles at all levels, not just sales positions, but also we see a lot of like clinical trainer, nurse advisor, application specialist positions, because the products my company sell are quite technical. They often need specialist people to help train the customers on proper usage. So those kind of roles. I've been with BMS for 15 years now, just passed that milestone in February. Grateful to receive some much needed golf lessons to celebrate that milestone. So I'll be kicking on with those soon. I started with BMS back in early 2008 as a very much bright-eyed and quite green recent graduate, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, in all honesty. Saw an advert, applied, like a lot of people, I suppose, at that stage of career, not really knowing what recruitment was all about. But met with the company, really enjoyed meeting with the people. It seemed a very sort of dynamic set of individuals. And delighted to say I've been here 15 years now and celebrated a good career and success over that time.
Never look back.
Absolutely.
Very much looking forward. Good stuff. Thanks for the intro, Dean. So the subject that we decided to talk about today is a really meaty one, which is the importance of the candidate experience, which is a large term in itself. But Dean, why did we decide to pick on this subject in particular right now?
Well, I think looking at a recruitment process from a candidate's point of view, from a client's mind, is super important at the moment. Because of what we've been experiencing as we came out of COVID, we're in probably the most candidate-driven market that I've ever worked in 15 years, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we mean by candidate-driven market is there are more jobs than good people out there, essentially. So the applicant market is very reactive. There aren't huge numbers of great caliber people proactively applying for roles online. So it's getting hard to find them. You've got to be very proactive with sourcing these people. When you do find good people, there is going to be competition for them because the jobs outweigh the number of good candidates. As simple as that. It's a very, very competitive candidate market at the moment. So this is why the candidate experience is so important, because interviews, they should always be a two-way process. They've obviously, candidates have got to impress the client in the interview panel, but also you've got to impress the candidate, giving them the best impression of why your job, why your company is the better place to work over the other companies that they're interviewing with.
Yeah, I love that term. You've got to impress the candidate. And this is a great place to start, I think. And I guess as a way of kicking off as well, the term candidate experience, it gets bandied around a lot, and it is a bit of a buzzword as well in recruitment, you could say. If I was to ask you to define the term candidate experience, how would you define it?
I think it's everything that the candidate learns about your company and yourself as a hiring manager. And that's not just the products it's selling, the kind of customer base, it's the company culture. How the company and the interviewer conducts themselves through the process will be an indication of what they like to work for.
Yeah.
So for example, is it a very slow recruitment process with 4, 5, 6 different stages? That might point to a more bureaucratic type of business where decisions get made very slowly or have to go through various levels of sign off, which can be quite frustrating for certain people. Some people might love working in those kind of big corporate type environments for a lot. They want to get things moving quicker. As I said, this is the company's opportunity really to demonstrate and give them examples of this is how we are, this is how we work, this is why you should trust us with your career moving forward.
Yeah. Great overview. Okay, well let's break down the candidate experience then. Where in your mind does it begin? Because people have different opinions on this, and we can only talk from our experience of working with clients across a huge variety of industry sectors and experiencing it ourselves. But where does it start? Where does the candidate experience actually begin?
Yeah, well, it's easy to think that the experience only starts from the first point of communication where you're on a phone call or sat down on a Teams meeting or face-to-face with a person. Really, it starts sooner than that, from the moment the person starts to apply for the positions. So let's look at two main methods of recruitment, through an agency, and also want to touch on direct sourcing as well, because that's an important aspect, I think, to cover off. So if you're going down the agency route, how well briefed is that agency? Do they know your company well enough to represent you as best as possible to the candidates that they've targeted for you? And making sure they get across your ethos, your brand, and again, impress them. Are you working in close partnership with them, or is that the 4th, 5th, 6th call that person's received that day about the same job, which does put people off sometimes? So there's that element as well, that very first impression of the company. If you're looking at a direct sourcing method, often through advertising, look at the adverts. How clear and concise is that advert? Is it maybe too specific in terms of the kind of person you're looking for? So you'll narrow down the talent pool available to you, or is it described as wide enough to really pull in the kind of a wider talent market, look at people from maybe outside of your selected sector and making it as applicable as possible? Things like the salary being on there as well is a huge point. Some companies don't like putting it on there, but I think it's super important to have that on from the start, so candidates know that this is within the range that they're looking for, firstly, so you're not going to waste time, and also attract people. If you're paying a great OTE and there's loads of brilliant benefits that you provide, get those on there. These are big selling points for the job and company. Beyond the advert, looking at things like Glassdoor reviews. We speak to a lot of candidates about companies, then look at Glassdoor, and if they see negative things on there, it will put them off. So being mindful of what your reputation is, or the brand in the market that exists already. What could potential candidates see before you sit down and discuss with them and sell yourself to them? There could be other things prior to that may be giving them concerns, or even put somebody off applying in the first place, which could lead on you missing out on that great candidate.
So I want to sit in this bit in this particular part of direct sourcing for a second, and I want to circle back to the relationships with recruitment partners and how the candidate experience can be formed by working effectively with them before the role even goes to market. But think about the direct piece. It's interesting that you should say that about Glassdoor, because one of your colleagues in our team today had a candidate pull out of an interview, and they've been with the current company for 10 years. It's quite a niche role, specific background. The candidate looked on Glassdoor and seen loads of bad reviews. A lot of the reviews actually weren't from salespeople. They were from other types of people in the company that were doing different types of jobs. But it's a classic example where how the client is portrayed online has resulted in a poor candidate experience, like straight from the off. We made the company aware of that because we've got a duty of care to do so. But it's a good example, and I think as well, if I was a candidate and I was on the market, I'd be definitely looking. LinkedIn page, is it up to date? They've got all the information on there. They're presenting that they've got a good culture, and you may agree on this as well. I'll be thinking about how personalised does the experience feel? Like, do I feel as though I'm just a number? Am I going on to careers website? I've then got to set up a large profile, which might take me 10-15 minutes in order to do so. Put my CV on there and then send off my application. I don't hear for a couple of weeks. Now, some companies are set up like that, but for some candidates it can be off-putting. So I guess advice for companies out there that are hiring, if there's anything you can do to streamline that application process, and it will definitely help. It does support the candidate experience. And I guess as well, what's your take on adverts, in terms of how they're written? Because sometimes you get an advert that is advertising for the ideal candidate rather than advertising for the best overall volume of candidates from the talent pool. And sometimes how adverts can be written, there's not as much emphasis on the actual company, on the culture piece, as what there might be.
Definitely. Yeah. Just like a candidate CV is their first opportunity to sell themselves to a company, the advert it could be seen in the same way as the opportunity to sell the job and the company to the candidate market. At one point you mentioned there about the advert detailing the ideal candidate. Yeah, great. You're always going to aim and try to get the ideal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the best person or the candidate company ends up recruiting matches that ideal and ticks every single box. It's probably quite rare, to be honest. In my market, for example, all I do is in medical devices. So the preference would be somebody from that background. But I've placed countless people from outside the market, either non-medical sales or maybe pharmaceutical salespeople. And if that isn't detailed on the advert, that the company would also consider people like that, they're missing out on a huge number of candidates. And there could be that one star in there who's the best person for the role. But you might have missed them because it's not on the advert.
But yeah, straight away, their experience as a candidate is, I'm not right for this. This company don't take people on with my background, and they're missing out on a huge portion of the talent pool. Yeah, to circle back in terms of the relationships companies can have with recruitment partners, let's talk about that. If you look at the companies that you work with and think about the ones that do invest their time with you to make sure you're properly briefed, how does that work? Like, what are the good companies that you're working with doing different, which is enabling you to deliver a good candidate experience to candidates that you're putting forward to them, versus maybe other ones that aren't, converse to that?
Yeah, I think that obviously as recruiters, we want to work in real partnership with the clients, understanding what their challenges are in the market, us finding creative solutions to them, maybe coming to them with new ideas, examples of what other clients have done to help fill vacancies. I think, again, it all circles back to having that candidate experience in a client's mind, thinking, right, okay, if I'm a candidate and BMS approached me for this job, what information am I going to need from them to say, yes, this is the kind of thing I want to apply for? Put me forward and let's get things moving. I think it's also about appreciating that we represent our clients to the candidate market. What we say will help influence people's decisions on whether or not to apply for the job. We can be a real ambassador for our clients, and
Absolutely.
And all my clients, I talk about everybody in very positive terms, and really give the candidates everything that's great about my clients that I work with, whether that's culture, career prospects, training, all these great selling points. And it's understanding that we can do that for you and help clients improve their brand in the market, rather than just maybe being seen as quite a transactional CV supplier, which is not really giving you a service and not working with the candidate market in ways that is important to, whilst things are so sort of heavily candidate driven.
Yeah, definitely. I think some companies exist in markets that are harder to place in than others, and if time is invested in the recruitment partnership, then we can absolutely enhance that candidate experience to effectively put a stronger, wider shortlist in front of people. That brings me on beautifully to the next point that I was keen to discuss with you. What are the other key factors in your mind then that contribute to the candidate experience?
So we've already discussed the kind of start of the process, and then once we get into the meat and bones of hiring, the interview process, basically looking at making your process as efficient and time effective as possible.
Okay.
As I said earlier, interviews and recruitment process has got to be 50-50. You need to see what the candidate brings to the table and challenge them in a certain way. There's no point having an easy interview process, because you're never going to really figure out who's the best person for the role and how they're going to face up to the challenges they'll come across in that position. So it's got to be appropriate. The challenges, the tasks, etc., have got to be suitable for the kind of person you're looking to hire and in line with what they'll be doing in the role. For example, if they never do presentations in the job, is there any benefit in getting them to a presentation at final stage? It's tried and tested, it's traditional, but are you actually going to learn how they can do the job? Yeah. Similarly, if you're looking for like a graduate trainee, is there any worth in getting them to do like a 12-month business plan? It won't be anything they've done before. If you need to do a presentation, maybe get them to do something that they're passionate about, so they can, you can see how they deliver a presentation, how confidently and articulately they can get across their ideas, things like that. So just making the recruitment process appropriate for the role and the kind of person you're looking for, and streamlining it so you've not got 5, 6, 7 stages, asking them to take a day off work to go and travel 150 miles for a first interview that we used to see all the time pre-COVID.
We still see it now the odd time as well.
But candidates, they didn't like doing it previously, but they kind of had to because it was the norm. And in certain cases, if a candidate quite justifiably said, look, I can't do that, the mindset was often, well, don't they want the job? Like, well,
yeah,
they don't really know enough about the job to make that call so far because they've not met with you and really got that insight. These days, obviously, with Teams and everything, things, that's avoided in most cases. But I think the point is just making it not easy for the candidate, but bear in mind that there will be other companies interested in them, offer them interviews around flexibility and with more of a fast process. The last thing you want to do is find a candidate who you're super keen on. You think this person's brilliant, they're going to get the job, but then you're beaten to the punch by another company because you've not been able to arrange the final interview within a realistic time frame of a week or so after that first meeting.
Fundamentally, in that situation, you've lost a candidate because the candidate experience was better with the other company. So it all comes back to the candidate experience, doesn't it? And I think of late, we've worked with companies who are embarking on the first sales recruit. We've worked with sales managers that they've recently been promoted. This is their first recruit as well. I reckon for the audience, and especially individuals in that situation who are looking for guidance to refine maybe their interview process and make it candidate friendly. Let's all play out a scenario. So Dean, if I'm a client, I've come to you, I'm new to recruiting, got a new vacancy, and I'm asking you for advice on creating an interview process that delivers a great candidate experience. Like, what would you advise me?
Firstly, I'll be delighted you've got that idea in mind to think, right, okay, I need to set in a process here, because that's the perfect things to do.
Yeah.
Before you sit down with people, know what you want to get out of that recruitment process and have set timeframes in place. So, you can manage the candidate expectations, say, okay, this is first stage, this is second stage, these are the dates we're looking to do those. If they need to move for whatever reason, then communicate that, explain the reason for the delay or something like this. Straightforward communication is so important. But then once you've set that plan in mind, I think the best way of doing it is the traditional first stage, second stage, make a job offer. When things start going beyond 3, 4, 5 stages, psychometric testing, this kind of thing, people can lose interest because the process is going on too long. And as we've said, other companies will come in and snatch those candidates off with a nice, straightforward 2-stage process. The tasks you get people to do, you've got to challenge them, make sure they're capable of the job, but be appropriate, as you said. But also, this is super important. As I said, you got to get the balance right, that 50-50 mentality of what's the candidate getting from this. This is your opportunity to sell the role to people, tell them why it's a great place to work, the company culture, all the benefits. Essentially treat them as a customer and ask them what they're looking for. What's the most important thing for that candidate? Is it training? Is it long-term career progression? Is it just earning a load of bonus? You've got to find that out, so then you can sell those points back to the candidates.
It's showing that interest again, isn't it, in the candidate, and putting yourself on a level with the candidate. So it's as much about the candidate, performing well, selling themselves as a fit for the role, as it is you selling yourself to the candidate, because that is going to again generate a better candidate experience. The candidate experience is great. They're going to have credibility in you as a future employer, that you can provide them the career progression and earning potential that we're looking for. You mentioned then 2-stage interview process. How long between first and second stage is too long?
I'd say any more than a week and you risk losing the candidate. Keep it within that time frame as much as possible. Certainly, ideally a little less. Plenty of companies who interview first stage on a Monday or Tuesday and do finals later in the week, which is great.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And this brings us on again onto the next point, and something that I was particularly keen on discussing. I think this is along with an elongated interview process, this is the other subject that can be detrimental to the candidate experience, which is feedback. Feedback's a massive subject, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on how important overall is effective feedback to the candidate experience.
Massively important. Probably one of the most important aspects of recruiting, I'd say, both for candidates who are successful in going through the process and getting a job offer at the end, and also for the ones who aren't successful, which, obviously by law of averages is probably most of the candidates you interview. A variety of reasons for this. For us as recruiters, it's so important to know what you like about the candidates and also what's not been quite right about them. And it helps us really focus that search for future hires. When we're working with you, really just understanding, from your point of view, what exactly works and what doesn't work when you meet people. From the candidates, obviously, as well. People like to know that they're liked. Simple as that. So 100%. If you're keen on somebody, then you don't necessarily need to tell them and say, you're going to commit to a second interview there and then at the end of the first meeting, but give them the kind of a warm feeling, let them know that they've done well in a way. So many times I'll take feedback from a candidate and the first impression is, I'm not really sure what they think. They didn't give much away. And then I'll get the client feedback and they'll say, oh yeah, they were brilliant, really, really good. Okay, but they've not got that sense from you. So just show it, basically. It's as simple as that, really. You don't need to show your hand too much, but let them know they've done well. Simple as that. And they'll feel much, much sort of closer to yourselves over these other companies they might be interviewing with.
What in your mind, when we say effective feedback to the audience, what that breaks down to is it's comprehensive feedback, not this person, no, unfortunately, they weren't the right fit. And that's pretty limited. Like, how much feedback is too much? What should clients, hiring managers be including in feedback for both candidates who are going to be progressed and ones that aren't going to be progressed?
It could be a multiple. I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast just on feedback, to be honest. Could be a good topic in future. But just succinctly, I think it's important to look at the interview technique. Yeah. So, for example, is somebody talking too much, which is a common one we see for salespeople? Are the answers not detailed enough? Are they sticking to a structure? Are they asking good questions? They're all general interview technique feedback, which is really important because that constructive criticism will help them, if they do go forward to that next stage, they know what to improve on. Or just common courtesy and helping out another individual for future interviews. If they're not successful with yours, these are the kind of things that you can work on to make sure you get the next job you go for. Yeah. Really nice thing to do, and people come away appreciating that feedback. Even if they're unsuccessful, they'll take that on board. They'll have a more positive feeling about the company because you've given them something to take away from it when they've not been successful for your position, which is great. You want even the unsuccessful people, well, especially because, like I said, they're going to be more unsuccessful than there are successful. So there'll be more candidates out there in the market who've been unsuccessful with yourselves, but you want them to have positive feelings about the company because when they speak to colleagues, friends, peers in the market, and they say, have you interviewed with this company before? Have you ever come across them? And they say, yeah, I did actually. I didn't get any feedback from, interviews. I drove 200 miles down the country for a second interview. I didn't get it and nobody told me why. That's going to put other people off just through word of mouth. Word of mouth is so important just in everywhere, but recruitment especially. Yeah. Whereas on the flip side of that, if they say, really nice people, I didn't get the job, unfortunately, but they were great. Really lovely set of people, met, people there in the office, company sounds good. Brilliant. Yeah. That's going to spread the word out in the market that you're a good, decent set of people, basically.
Yeah, if we look at the companies with the really strong, employer value propositions that have got great reputations, they're all good at giving feedback in a timely manner, and even as well after a second or a third stage interview, if it's been a longer process, there have been instances where the hiring manager actually called candidates in themselves to say, look, you haven't been successful. Whilst it can be a difficult call to make, candidates do really appreciate that. And we discussed at the very beginning of this podcast about how candidate driven the market has been and how it still is. And if you're in a niche industry sector like medical devices, like maybe one of the more technical sectors or finance, whatever it might be, then the circles are small and people talk. So it is important from a reputation perspective that the feedback is comprehensive, constructive, and it's timely. And I think that's one of the biggest bugbears of candidates, isn't it? When they're chasing us for feedback, we've not had feedback, or they've not had it themselves from a direct interview. It is probably the number one reason, in my experience, why that a candidate experience can turn negative. I think.
Definitely. Yeah. We used to see a lot of bad reviews online about lack of feedback and, being asked to, go through so many different stages and get nothing back at the end of it. They know they're not going to get every single job they go for, but just coming away with a positive feeling about that company, despite that.
As an aside point to this as well, because it goes back to the previous point we discussed about interview process. If companies really want to dial down to make sure their interview process is effective and they're getting everything that they need out of it, then one question they can be asking to candidates, if they're giving feedback, or even if they're talking to the recruitment partners, is asking candidates, how was the interview process? Can we have feedback from you as a candidate on how you found our process? Whether or not they were a yes or a no, that information could be extremely valuable to the company so that they can refine it and they can continue to improve the candidate experience, which is fundamentally going to enable them to recruit better in the medium to long term. Cool.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
So we're going through the process here, and we're kind of getting to that point now. So we've gone from before the candidate experience starts, we've talked about interview and timescales. We're then talking about feedback. So assuming it's all been positive, we're at the offer process. So, Dean, I've selected my candidate. I'm ready to make the offer. What should I be mindful of at this vital stage of the process to ensure that the candidate experience doesn't turn sour
at the offer stage?
At the offer stage, I've made the offer now to the candidate, and we see this, don't we? This is where it can fall down for a multitude of reasons. So I thought it'd be useful for us to talk about that to the audience to get some of our insights on that. So, what do I need to be doing if I'm a hiring manager, decision maker, to make sure that the candidate experience doesn't go south at this point?
Of course. Well, this is, you come into the crucial part of the hiring process now, so it's vital to get everything right. Obviously, if you're making an offer, you need to know what that offer is going to need to look like for the person to be happy, accept, pull out of other interviews and take themselves off the market to commit with yourselves. So this could come through a close relationship with the recruiter. What's this person looking for? What do we need to pay them? What added benefits are they looking for? Do we need to be flexible on company car or car allowance? All these little nuances that come with the package. It's not always just about the basic salary and OTE.
So making the right offer. Making the right
absolutely.
offer. Yeah.
Definitely. A good way of doing it is to bring this up in the interviews. What are you looking for? What's your salary expectations? What are you on at the moment? What would you like to earn? These kind of questions. What added benefits do you get at the moment? Do the fact find.
What else do we need to be aware of?
Getting the offer out in a timely way. You can make a verbal offer, get verbal acceptance there and then on the conversation, ideally. But then if you've got to go through layers of sign off to get a written contract out, which could take a week, 2 weeks in some cases. I've seen it before with clients. In the meantime, candidate gets a call from another company who are interviewing the day after. They could easily go through an entire 2-stage recruitment process in that week between making the verbal offer and getting the written offer. So making sure that your own internal processes are efficient, so that's done as quickly as possible. Any more than a day to get a written offer out to them is probably too long.
Totally. And until a contract is signed, it can still be quite a way from being done. So just because we've got an offer out doesn't mean it's done. It's not even 2/3 of the way there. So yeah, good point. What other tips could you give the audience of what they could do at this stage to make that candidate experience, continue to keep it positive?
Yeah. Well, by that point, if you've had verbal acceptance on the offer, the candidate's keen. Actually, you'll have built up a certain rapport with them. Often we see an offer going out and then the candidate hearing nothing until a week before they're due to start, and they get an induction plan come through. Don't really see why you wouldn't continue with the rapport you've built up. Once you've made an offer, accepted it, or the candidate, congratulate them, let them know you're really excited about getting them on board. Simple things like that. I think the personal touch really, really helps. Definitely. You could even arrange like a conversation or a coffee meeting, Teams meeting, whatever, with another member of the team. Get people that they'll be working with to get in touch, welcome them, let them know that they're to support if they need anything in the early days. Really, emphasize and double down on that company culture, the nice, supportive environment they're going to be moving into. Great. They're then much, much less likely to have their head turned if another company or recruiter calls in touch with, a job and sells them the dream. So no, I've committed to that. I know I want a great thing.
And don't get us wrong as well. A lot of candidates, once they've verbally accepted an offer, they will go to that. But there are situations where they do get the head turned, like you're saying. I think if a candidate has been so bought into a company, hiring managers throughout the process, and they've got a great feeling, it's been quick, the feedback's been constructive, it's been a challenging interview process, but it's also been a learning experience, then they're right back, they accept the offer, and then nothing for a week, paperwork doesn't go out. And then they sign the paperwork when it does go out, but they don't start for 4 weeks, there's no contact in between. Their impression of that company can definitely start to sour somewhat, because it's great up until this point, but now I've accepted an offer, I've not heard from them. So do I still want to join? And going back to what we said, with it being such a candidate driven market, it's these smaller points, you could call them, or tips at the end of a process that can be the difference. It's these marginal gains that companies can be making by just checkpoints, making sure the offer's going out quickly. Cool.
The best thing about them as well, they require no effort. To just call the candidate and have a 3-minute conversation to congratulate them, welcome to the team. It's minimal, but it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, it is, because as well, I think sometimes it does get forgotten that for a candidate, going through an interview process can be one of the most nerve-wracking things that they may have to do. They're putting themselves out there. So everything we're talking about here, developing the candidate experience, touch points at the end of the process, it's helpful for them. It gives that warm, fuzzy feeling. They're excited to join you, or even if they haven't been successful, they had a great experience with your company. They may go away and do another job for a couple of years and then come back to you when they've got extra experience. So the benefits are compound. So to round off, Dean, then I guess it would be great to finish off with you giving our audience your 2 top tips on what some of the top line benefits can be in prioritizing a good candidate experience.
Well, firstly, having a clear, concise, efficient, quick interview process that really hones in on what the candidates need, so you can effectively tailor your sales pitch of the job, the company to them, is going to help you get that best person on board and influence their decision to take your job over the 2, 3, 4 of the companies that they're interviewing with at the moment. Another positive aspect of the candidate experience is just the message that's out there in the wider candidate market. Within the industry I work in, medical devices, it's quite niche. People talk to each other. I know certain companies, unfortunately, have got bad reputations because people have had negative experiences about a hiring process before. They've told friends about them when they've asked, okay, do you know this company? And it's put people off from applying. It can make things really difficult and detrimental to future hiring processes if that word's out there. The great thing is you can influence that by giving everybody a positive experience using some of the tips we've discussed about feedback, constructive. It's as simple as that. So there's only benefits that come from a good candidate experience, whether people are successful or unsuccessful.
And that's a great line to finish on. So thank you for joining me today, Dean. Really enjoyed having you on and all the knowledge that you've shared.
Thanks, Mike. Been a pleasure.
Great. So next week's episode, I'll be joined by my colleague Fiona Jensen. We're going to be talking about a topic that's really on point, I would say, at the moment, which is going to be the impact of artificial intelligence on marketing, recruitment, and AI is obviously a trendy subject at the moment. So looking forward to getting stuck into that one. So thank you everyone for listening to us today. As we, we're really trying to grow this podcast. So please, can people give us a review, a follow, a rating? It would be much appreciated. And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you.